Hi, I'm Ron Friedman. I'm a consultant with Fireman and Company, and I also blog at Strategic Legal Technology, which you can find at www.prismlegal.com. And I'm here today with Nick Baughan of Marks Baughan. And Nick is someone who does a lot of deals in the legal technology and the legal market. But rather than me steal his thunder, why don't you start by telling us what it is you do exactly?
Thank you, Ron. I'd be delighted to. Marks Baughan is a boutique investment bank that works predominantly with companies in the legal and compliance sector. And we really do a few things. First and foremost, for young companies that are experiencing rapid growth and need access to capital, we help them find sources of capital to continue their growth or make acquisitions. And for larger, more established companies that may be venture-backed or be seeking full liquidity, we work with those companies to find strategic outcomes to sell those companies. We are about 10 years old and have focused on this market almost exclusively and have completed 25 transactions for value well over $2 billion in this market. And it's a market that we think has many, many exciting dynamics to it.
And just, I think that given that we're at Legal Tech, and you know roughly who the audience is, a lot of vendors and a lot of CIOs of law firms, is there a deal you can talk about that you've done that the audience might recognize?
Well, I can talk about all sorts of deals that we've done in different sectors. We, like the rest of the industry, look at providers that are focusing on corporate legal departments or on law firms. And we also look at litigation-related companies. We look at practice management. We look at case management. We look at compliance and legal type companies. So, like the rest of the market, the e-discovery space has been very active for over 10 years. It's gone through a lot of different cycles. We've worked with companies such as Applied Discovery, Matrix, Electronic Evidence Discovery, Case Data, CaseSoft, CaseMap, a whole host of large players in that market. Integrion is has been a client of ours in the past. So we were very, very involved with a lot of the different e-discovery transactions. We also work with litigation services for court reporting. So we've worked with Veritext. We have worked with Alexander Gallo. And we've done a lot in practice management and case management on the law firm side, companies such as Juris in time and billing, Serengeti in corporate legal billing and case management. And so I think that's a good feel for some of the
clients. No, that's really great. I mean, I think one of the things, this is the sense I had, because we met a few years ago when I was at Integrion, and I had the sense you were really immersed in this market. And I think it's important for me to understand and for listeners to understand you really know this market from a very specific perspective, which was why I was personally eager to talk to you, because I think you have a very interesting and unusual vantage on the legal market.
And there's some key themes that are affecting all of the participants in this market.
I'd love to hear about
that are affecting our banking business as well. And probably one of the first and foremost structural challenges for law firms is law firms cannot take on outside capital. And so unless you're a partner of a law firm, you cannot be an equity partner in the firm. And so in my view, law firms have an artificially high cost of capital. Couple that with rapid changes in technology that we've seen over the last 10 years, primarily in email and other electronically stored information. Law firms have had to invest in technologies that they were ill-capitalized to invest in and getting out of their core business of the practice of law. The third area, and it's kind of the perfect storm, is that corporate legal departments, which traditionally didn't have an IT budget for the legal department, have becoming much more focused on managing their outside legal spend, and it's become an area where there's a lot more sophistication around procurement of legal services. And so all of that's created a dynamic where a lot of things that law firms used to do and used to do at very attractive margins have been eroded by third-party commercial providers who have better access to private equity funds or other types of investors and who can offer a different value proposition to the corporate legal consumer.
So it's interesting, before we were filming, we were talking about the new normal, that is, with the recession crash of starting in 2007, 2008, we saw the large, I focus primarily on the large law firms, the AmLaw 200, and we saw in that market that profits dropped. There were a lot of cutbacks, and even today, even though there's some growth, and depending which report you read, which benchmark report you read, gets slightly different point of view. But I think everyone agrees prices aren't going to go up the way they had. Law firm rates, rather, aren't going to continue to go up. That law firms will have to compete. So it's interesting to hear what you're saying already is that some of what law firms have done is being sliced away from them. Which, I mean, it sounds like the law firm's loss, if you will, or the crash for them has been good for your business in the banking side.
It's been good for my business, and it's been good for other businesses as well. And I think that I'm not sure aggregate legal demand has changed.
Okay.
But
do you think the prices?
I think the provision of that legal demand has changed. And so the pyramid at law firms has definitely begun to narrow as law firms have really had to rethink trying to get billable hours for junior associate work that could be done by third-party providers. And at the same time, I think alternative providers have cropped up and have provided services on a different value proposition. And those could either be providers of lawyers who are working through other types of organizations that don't have the same cost structure as a law firm, like an Axiom Legal, for example. Right. Or it could be technology players who are trying to disintermediate law and saying we can provide certain technologies that replicate the provision of legal advice without providing legal advice.
Well, maybe this is putting you in the spot too much, in which case you can say so, but I've been personally very interested in those alternatives, both the technology as a substitute for labor and alternative providers. So I work for Integrion, which is a legal process outsourcing company. I'm very familiar with Axiom Law. If you had to place a bet, and you do place bets, right, because you are on the banking side, what do you think will be attractive areas of growth on the provider side? Meaning, will we see competition to Axiom? Will we see more LPOs? Will there be new technologies emerging? Any guesses from what you see in the deal flow?
It's a good question. And a little bit is all of the above. On the technology side, there are certain areas where we see technology taking away what used to be done by professionals. If I take managed document review, for example, that was traditionally the purview of lawyers. Then it became the purview of staffing attorneys and staffing companies. And increasingly with early case assessment type technologies and predictive coding, I think there's a general belief that a lot of the professional services market will be eroded by software in that market. On the other hand, we see companies that are providing platforms for large attorneys who would like to leave their firm and go and start their own businesses and don't have the back office capabilities. So
is that like Total Attorneys?
Total Attorneys is a very good example. There was a company here earlier today, Next Firm, who's providing back office.
They're locally based, right?
New York City company. And so I think that's also is providing lawyers the platform and the technologies that they need to do what they do best, which is give their clients legal advice and on a cost-effective basis.
One of the things that's always intrigued me, and from what you said about the alternatives and the technology, and maybe this is more my fascination, but to me, I've always tried to understand the benefit of a very large law firm. And we see some of these so-called global platform players that are in multiple countries. And to be slightly academic, Ronald Coase, an economist who won a Nobel Prize for the theory of the firm, meaning there's lower transaction costs internally than externally, all that seems like it was true once, but I don't see large law firms really taking advantage of their scale. And I'm curious if you see anything from the technology or from the deal-making side that would suggest more of these platform plays that would allow more spin-offs, more boutiques from the large law firms so that the whole infrastructure might change, that there may be, one scenario, let's play a scenario game, is one scenario would be 10 or 20 large global platforms, but then there'll be a lot of reputable boutiques. Does that resonate with you, or am I?
It does. And I think one of the key things that we've seen over the last several years is the equal access to information, or the breaking down of the proprietary nature of information. I think that the largest law firms throughout their histories have had a proprietary document knowledge management repository, and a great amount of their intellectual property is captive within those organizations. And I think that may speak to some of the lower frictions that you're speaking about. But I think increasingly, much of this information is either becoming readily accessible through free sites, whether it's Google, whether it's other sites through the internet. And additionally, I think firms are becoming able to share information through social networks, through other types of media, where the information can be much more readily disseminated. And so I think you're seeing people can spin off from larger organizations and still have access to a lot of the key information that they need to provide the right advice.
Right. It's also having been an early adopter of working at home, I left then Wilmer Cutler in early 1998, and I started working at home, and it was right around that time when the so-called means of production started becoming available. So you could get home printers, home copy machines, everything you needed to work at home. That's only more true, which is another reason why I wonder, why do top lawyers have to work as part of a law firm, especially since they can also network? So, I mean, it sounds like you agree with that.
I think there's some truth to that.
Okay. And so from the transactions perspective or the technology perspective, are you seeing anything this year? I know the show just started, but to tie it back to legal tech, is there some hot new technology we should all be paying attention to that's not e-discovery?
No, I think that for the Legal Tech Show, it seems to me that it's still predominantly based on e-discovery, and I think that the biggest shift within e-discovery is, and we still haven't seen it play out fully yet, is where the information and the technology tools will go from allowing lawyers to do the work that they need to do versus allowing the corporate technology departments to better handle the information. And so as those tools become behind the corporate firewall, and information governance type solutions, but we still haven't seen that really take off in any full scale.
So if I'm the COO, managing partner, CIO of a large law firm, any advice for me on whether I should insource or outsource e-discovery? Because that's an active debate.
That's a great question, and there are still two types of firms out there. There are players that don't want to be in that business and rely...
When you say players, law firms.
Law firms that don't want to be in that business and are really looking to entertain partnerships with folks like Integrion or other players in the market to get the type of quality service that they need for their clients, but they don't want to take the investments in-house. On the other hand, there are still firms that are very, very good litigation firms that want to house those capabilities in-house. Morgan Lewis, for example, is a very large captive business that does that. And so you still see either side of that equation.
So you think the market will continue to have room for both models?
I think so. And I think the vendors and the legal service providers who don't enable the law firms to stay in that market do so at their own risk, because I think the biggest challenge the commercial vendors have had in this market is the relationships. And those law firms with hundreds of partners have very, very strong networks of relationships, and I think they're very sticky relationships. So I think that the successful vendors will be ones with models that allow law firms to partner with them.
Well, Nick, it's really great to get your perspective. I'm really pleased that you agreed to do this, because I think financial perspective tells all, if you will.
Thanks, Ron. It was my pleasure.
So thank you very much for joining us. And this is Ron Friedmann, Fireman and Company Consulting and Strategic Legal Technology.